You see, this is exactly what we were talking about. WNBA All-Star ratings are in for 2025, and it is down 40%. 40% from last year. That's bad. That is really bad. We already watched the ticket prices drop by more than 50% because Caitlin Clark was not playing. This is bad news for the WNBA.
The WNBA is in full-blown panic mode, and the numbers prove it. The league's biggest showcase, the All-Star Game, just saw its ratings collapse by nearly 40%. That's not a stumble, that's a free fall. To put it bluntly, fewer people tuned in to watch the league's premier event than an average regular season game featuring Caitlin Clark. Think about that. One rookie's regular game outdrew the supposed crown jewel of the season. Without Clark on the court, the WNBA looks exposed, vulnerable, and on the brink of something it may not recover from, and what comes next could reshape the entire future of women's basketball. When the All-Star Game ratings were finally released, the numbers sent shockwaves through the league. A 40% drop year over year. That isn't just a decline, it's a flat-out disaster. In fact, the so-called biggest night of the season pulled fewer viewers than a regular Indiana Fever game when Caitlin Clark was on the court. That comparison alone is devastating.
But the WNBA All-Star Game ratings have come out, and all I could think of right off the bat was 4 little letters. F-A-F-O. F around and find out. You bleep around and find out what this league looks like without Caitlin Clark being involved in your biggest events.
It proves what fans and analysts had been warning for months. Without Clark, the WNBA doesn't just lose a little momentum, it loses its entire spotlight. What was supposed to be a showcase of league-wide talent turned into a harsh reminder that all the star power, all the hype, all the attention was tied to one player. And the scariest part? That was only the beginning of the collapse. If the TV ratings were a warning shot, the ticket sales were the knockout punch. Nothing shows the value of a player more clearly than what fans are willing to pay to see them live. And once Caitlin Clark went down, the market's response was immediate and brutal. Before her injury, tickets to see the Indiana Fever take on the Chicago Sky were averaging around $86 for the cheapest seat in the house. A healthy demand, proving that people were more than willing to spend real money just to catch a glimpse of Clark in action. But the moment word broke that she'd be sidelined, that same ticket plummeted to just $25.
Fever Sky tickets dropped 71% on TickPick after Caitlin Clark injury. The get-in price for the Chicago Sky versus Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever game was $86. After Caitlin Clark's injury announcement is now down to $25. And you Angel Reese fangirls will still believe and think that Angel Reese is the reason why people are watching the WNBA. Since y'all want to make it about race, this white girl over here is the reason why fans are tuning in to watch the WNBA.
A staggering 71% drop almost overnight. That kind of collapse isn't speculation, it isn't opinion, it's cold, hard evidence. The so-called Caitlin Clark effect wasn't just about hype, it was a measurable economic force. She wasn't just filling arenas, she was inflating their value. And without her, the bubble didn't just deflate, it burst. Even worse for the league, this wasn't an isolated case. It revealed a terrifying truth. The WNBA's ticket market lives and dies on one player's availability. Fans weren't lining up for the WNBA experience. They were lining up for the Caitlin Clark experience. And once she was out, they didn't hesitate to walk away. That reality left the league with a gut-punching question. If one injury can wipe out both television audiences and ticket sales in the blink of an eye, what does that say about the league's long-term foundation? As bad as the ratings collapse and ticket nosedive were, they didn't happen in a vacuum.
The New York Liberty is playing the best style of basketball. They are playing the best basketball currently in the WNBA. And when they just had a nationally televised game on ESPN against the Chicago Sky, against Angel Reese, who was one of the biggest names in the WNBA, they had around 600,000 viewers, which is so low. You cannot make fans watch what they don't want to watch. But all we heard last year is if the fans were only watching the Indiana Fever, only watching games Caitlin Clark was playing in, then they weren't real fans and they didn't like basketball. And you just had so much media and WNBA personalities and even players just shunning the new fans.
This crisis wasn't just about one injury, it was about how the league treated the tidal wave of new fans Caitlin Clark brought with her, and instead of embracing them, the WNBA seemed almost determined to push them away. For months, a strange narrative started building online and inside the league itself. Players, media personalities, and even commentators began echoing the same line. If you're only here to watch Caitlin Clark, then you're not a real fan. It was meant as a defense of the league's history and veterans. But the impact was the opposite. Millions of new viewers who had tuned in for the first time, people who bought jerseys, filled arenas, and broke viewership records, were told flat out that they didn't belong. Think about that. Instead of rolling out the red carpet, the league slammed the door in their faces. Instead of saying, "Welcome, stay a while, here are other stars you'll love," they mocked and dismissed the very people fueling their biggest growth spurt in decades.
So check this out. The game on June 7th, the tickets were originally $86. Same seats, now $25. After her injury announcement, 71% drop in price. Over 71% drop in price. Because she's not going to be in the game.
The result? Those fake fans packed up their wallets, their eyeballs, and their energy and left.
The irony is brutal. The league had spent years begging for mainstream attention. They finally got it through Clark, a once-in-a-generation magnet for eyeballs, and instead of nurturing that fragile momentum, they acted like they didn't want it. And now, with Clark injured and her fans feeling unappreciated, the stands are emptier, the TV numbers are weaker, and the online buzz has vanished. It's a textbook case of self-sabotage. The WNBA didn't just lose fans because of Clark's absence. They lost them because when they had the chance to make those casual viewers part of the long-term family, they shunned them. And once you alienate an audience like that, it's almost impossible to win them back. But if the fan treatment looked bad, what happened next on the court turned the crisis from embarrassing to dangerous. As if alienating fans wasn't enough, the league found itself facing an even darker problem, one that hit at the heart of its product. Injuries began piling up, and suddenly, the WNBA wasn't just losing viewers, it was losing players. And not just role-player stars. Caitlin Clark was the first domino to fall, and her absence alone gutted the league's momentum. But it didn't stop there. Angel Reese, one of the most heavily promoted names in the sport, was sidelined. Then Sydney Colson went down. Then Lexi Hull suffered an injury in a play that many described as completely avoidable. To fans watching, it didn't feel like random bad luck. It felt like a pattern. That pattern had one common denominator: the refereeing. Over and over, critics, fans, and even players pointed to the same issue: officiating that was not only inconsistent but outright dangerous. Missed calls on reckless contact. Flagrant fouls ignored. Star players left unprotected in a league that desperately needed to keep them on the court. This is where the blame started moving upward. Because the referees aren't acting in a vacuum. They operate under the standards set by league leadership. And under Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA has faced growing criticism for failing to ensure that games are being officiated with consistency, fairness, and, most importantly, safety. Fans weren't blind to it. Clips circulated online showing Clark being hacked with no whistle, Reese taking hard hits that went unpunished, and other players visibly frustrated at the lack of protection. For a league that depends on its stars to carry national broadcasts, every missed call wasn't just a bad moment. It was a financial liability. And the fallout was brutal. With every injury, the WNBA's star power drained further. The product on the court thinned out, the game slowed down, and the excitement flatlined. The league wasn't just failing to protect its players, it was actively sabotaging itself. What had started as a ratings crisis was now morphing into a credibility crisis. And the damage was beginning to show not just on the scoreboard, but in the very atmosphere of the arenas. With stars sidelined and officiating under fire, the WNBA's biggest nightmare became reality. The games themselves stopped being entertaining. And once the excitement on the court is gone, there's nothing left to sell. Arena after arena started to feel like ghost towns. What should have been electric matchups between rival teams turned into slow, lifeless scrimmages. Instead of high-energy highlights lighting up social media, fans were watching methodical, low-scoring games where the crowd noise barely rose above a murmur. Even the commentators, whose job is literally to inject energy into broadcasts, sounded strained, like they were trying to convince viewers of drama that just wasn't there. The difference was jarring. When Clark was on the floor, every play felt like it mattered. Every possession had a spotlight moment. With her gone, the product felt stripped of its heartbeat. Watching the WNBA without its main attraction was like going to a concert expecting fireworks and getting a sound technician humming into the microphone instead. And it wasn't just about entertainment value. The league is supposed to be selling itself as a premium product, something worth tuning into and paying for. But the reality fans saw didn't match the marketing. Instead of a league filled with must-see stars, the WNBA suddenly looked shallow, fragile, and unprepared to stand on its own. What's worse, the emptiness on the court fed directly into the perception off of it. Fans weren't just bored, they were leaving. The empty seats in the arenas became proof of what the TV ratings already suggested. The WNBA was failing to deliver on its promise. But the collapse wasn't confined to stadiums and TV broadcasts. The damage started spreading into the one place the league had finally broken through in recent years: social media. And what happened there might be the most damning sign of all. If empty arenas showed the problem in real life, social media revealed it in real time. Just a few months ago, every Caitlin Clark highlight went viral. Millions of views, endless debates, constant memes. The WNBA finally had cultural relevance. But the moment she went down, the buzz evaporated. Instead of trending clips and fan arguments, timelines turned silent. Engagement on league posts collapsed. What little conversation remained shifted from excitement to frustration. Complaints about officiating, boring games, and the league's refusal to adapt. For brands and sponsors, that silence is the kiss of death. They don't just buy into a sport, they buy into cultural chatter. And right now, the WNBA has none. What was once a digital goldmine has become a ghost town, and everyone can see it. The collapse made one thing painfully clear. The WNBA built its entire comeback on a single foundation: Caitlin Clark. And the moment she was removed, the whole structure cracked. Contrast that with the NBA. When LeBron James or Steph Curry goes down, the league doesn't implode. Storylines continue, rivalries heat up, and other stars step into the spotlight. That's the strength of depth built over decades. The WNBA, on the other hand, tied its resurgence to one rookie. There was no safety net, no backup plan, no other storyline strong enough to carry the weight. It wasn't an ecosystem, it was a house of cards. And Clark's injury showed how fragile it really was. This wasn't just a bad stretch, it was the exposure of a fatal flaw. The league was never bigger than one player, and pretending otherwise has brought it to the edge of collapse. If the empty seats and tanking ratings weren't bad enough, the timing of this collapse made everything worse. The WNBA wasn't just playing games, it was preparing for the most important negotiation in its history: a new media rights deal. League executives were dreaming of $1 billion payday, riding the wave of Caitlin Clark's unprecedented star power. Just months ago, it looked possible. Networks wanted in, advertisers were circling, and for the first time, the WNBA seemed to hold the leverage. But now, those negotiations look like a disaster waiting to happen. Broadcasters have seen the numbers. They've watched the fans disappear. They've seen ticket prices plummet. That royal flush the WNBA thought it had in its hand, it's gone. Instead of walking into the room with confidence, the league is crawling in with excuses, hoping the collapse can be spun as temporary. But TV networks don't invest in hope. They invest in ratings. And right now, the WNBA has none. What was supposed to be a franchise-altering moment may end up as a decade-long setback. The billion-dollar dream? Vanished, almost overnight. The WNBA gambled that it was bigger than one player. It ignored the warnings, mocked the new fans, failed to protect its stars, and built its entire comeback on a fragile foundation. And the results are now undeniable. Ratings in free fall, ticket sales collapsing, empty arenas, and a billion-dollar media deal slipping through its fingers. This isn't just a bad season. This is the kind of crisis that defines a league's future. Because once you lose cultural relevance, once fans stop caring, it's almost impossible to win them back. The WNBA had lightning in a bottle with Caitlin Clark, and instead of protecting it, they let it slip through their hands. Now the only question left is the one fans are already asking: can the WNBA recover from this collapse, or has the moment already passed?